Let's assume we're live.
Hi guys.
Hello everybody, we are Naked Security, back on Facebook Live. I'm Paul Ducklin, this is Alice.
Hey.
Alice, tell us what today's topic is and more importantly, why we've chosen it.
Yep, so today we're talking about WannaCry, which was one of the most notorious types of ransomware in history.
Certainly was.
Very fast spreading and hit over 200,000 computers in over 150 countries when it hit in May 2017. It's surprising because even after 2.5 years and multiple patches being available, one actually available before the first strain hit, we're still seeing this as a very prevalent attack. And Sophos experts put out a research paper this week where they discovered that over 12,000 strains of the ransomware is currently in circulation. So, Doug, how can that still be?
Yes, it kind of beggars belief, doesn't it? I guess the big difference with WannaCry over other common malware attacks in recent memory is that it's, as I said, it's a virus, it's a network spreading worm, and that means that it doesn't need a user to download anything. Once it gets going, it has a life of its own, so that's why it had this explosive appearance.
Right.
And once people realise, gosh, this is a terrible thing, because obviously the side effect is it scrambles all your files and then send me $300. And even if you sent the money, I think the crooks had panicked because it spread so far and wide.
Really?
They kind of ducked down behind the parapet.
They couldn't even keep control of it.
I'm not aware of anybody who actually paid the money and got the decryption.
Wow.
So it was all a bit of a crisis. We apparently got it under control, but it turns out that what happened is that a small number of people seem to have tried to take the original version of WannaCry.
Right.
They've modified it in the hope of sort of bringing it back to life. Very tiny modifications.
Right.
Maybe changing a URL string inside the malware, hacking 1 or 2 bytes of the code. And then they've let this thing go, hoping it will come back to life. And what that's done is it's meant that the virus is still able to spread, but perhaps by good fortune, the 12,000 variants that we spotted, and those are just the ones we spotted.
Right, okay,
the world,
wow.
Those new variants that are they've been brought back to life, but they no longer work destructively, presumably because of some kind of corruption, maybe due to random network errors or something.
Interesting.
So get a version of the malware that isn't getting detected, that isn't getting blocked, that is able to spread to unpatched computers, is still able to run but doesn't do any damage. So it doesn't get noticed by anybody, it doesn't raise any alarm bells of people who haven't patched, but it just carries on trying and trying and trying and trying to infect.
Okay.
So on computers that were protected by Sophos Endpoint Protection, Sophos Intercept X, but hadn't been patched, we saw in a 3-month period last year, I think more than 5 million infection attempts. Wow. That's just computers that were protected by our software that hadn't been patched, that somebody else was trying to infect.
Right.
So what that says is there's an awful lot of computers out there that haven't been patched. So this worm can still spread onto them, and not just this worm, it probably means crooks can wander in if they really care to try.
Right, okay.
Because you haven't done the patch. And the other thing it means is there's at least a significant number of computers that are still actively trying to spread the infection. So those ones, they might be patched because they're already infected, but they don't have any antivirus or any protection that's blocking and removing this thing. And they're just acting like typhoid Marys, just spewing these randomly permuted variants of the malware, and everyone's going, well, it's not scrambling my files, maybe I don't need to worry.
Okay.
I'd say you do need to worry very much indeed.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to be looking down a bit, guys, because I'm taking your questions live, so that's why I'm looking down. We've got one already, but before we start with that, it's from Teresa. Hi, Teresa.
Hi, Teresa.
By the way, if you are watching, just send us a wave, tell us where you're from. We love to know who we're reaching when we're live. But firstly, before we get to the other questions, can you just explain ransomware for people who may not know, and specifically WannaCry?
Yeah, here's one I prepared earlier, because obviously ransomware gets all the headlines because it's very visible and very scary.
Yeah.
So let's start with a very simple definition. Tell me when I've zoomed in enough. That should do it. So ransomware, my simple definition is it's basically malicious software, malware, that locks you out of something, either your whole device or usually a few files or many files, and then it says, give me money or I won't let you back in. And that's really what it does. So it's extortion, that it's a kind of malware that's really, really obvious. In fact, I can show you that unlike something like a keylogger or something that's trying to steal your data and sitting quietly in the background, a lot of ransomware, and WannaCry is a case in point, it really, really wants you to know that something bad happened and that you got infected. So it actually changes your wallpaper. That's what you see. It says, oops, that's a cool choice of word, all your files are encrypted, and says now you're going to have to pay money. And it even tells you what to do if your antivirus accidentally removed the data that you need to get, how to recover the data that you need to tell the crooks how to get your data back. So that's the reason that ransomware gets a lot of attention, is that firstly there's the monetary demand. In this case it was quite modest, just $300. Recently we've seen demands going up to tens of thousands, and even, believe it or not, millions of dollars when the crooks have hit an entire network. And then the other thing that people may remember with WannaCry is typically the idea is that you, if I can get back to.
So did this start with, so this started obviously with one group of criminals unleashing the malware, but you're saying that it spread so quickly that they actually couldn't keep track of it themselves?
Well, we can only guess. I don't think anyone really knows who did it or where it came from. My expectation is that they kind of imagined it would spread fast enough that they'd get a wide number of people hit before everyone got on top of it, but not so fast that the whole world would go, oh my goodness, the sky is falling, because it really was. In fact, that's probably the reason why most ransomware attacks and most malware attacks these days have shifted from the old days, self-spreading viruses, worms. They've shifted to stuff they deliver, say, by email or by logging in because they've hacked your password, and they kind of go one at a time.
More targeted.
Well, it's just that then they can pick one company, take it out, demand a huge ransom. But the problem with WannaCry is not only did they hit lots of people at the same time, this thing just went so crazy that everyone alarm bells rang. And I'd imagine if you're the crook and you're expecting to have to deal with tech support to get your $300 in bitcoins, they probably just felt, we're going to get overwhelmed. This has got so big, it just went completely out of control. We better run and hide. In fact, history suggests that this is frequently what happens with attempted network worms. The very first one that I know of was the internet worm back in 1988, and the guy who unleashed that, when he was prosecuted in court, he sort of apologized, saying, I kind of made a mistake in the replication rate. I actually typed it in wrongly, and I set it 10 times faster than I intended. So I basically flattened the internet, and then people couldn't fix it. Now, the court said, too bad. That's not an excuse. That's just a fact. But it just goes to show that that's the problem with malware, is you can never quite predict how it's going to behave. So that was another bad thing about WannaCry, is, of course, that it wasn't like more traditional ransomware where word gets around that
the blinds are closing, yay!
Are they?
I think so. That's good news.
So if we're going a bit dark,
we did ask them to do it, and so I'm glad they've done it now.
It's because we're no longer in the spotlight. So the annoying thing about all of this, or the good thing, is that the variants that have survived, they've survived because they do still spread, can still spread, but they don't cause any damage. So the good news is they don't cause damage. But the bad news is that means that there are millions of people out there who are going, you know what, I'll worry about this tomorrow, because what harm is it doing? Well, the harm it's doing is that somebody you attack might not be so lucky. It might not scramble their files, but it might crash their computer. It might damage this. It might cause that problem. It might cause the other problem. And the other indicator, those 5 million people where detections came up, the blinds have automatically opened.
Well, we got it for 2 minutes. No problem.
So we're back in the spotlight, folks. Those 5 million people who got the infection attempts coming back, although they didn't get infected because Sophos was able to block the infection. But of course, what it means is that the reason we actually flagged it in the first place is that it was able to start breaking in, and we blocked the exploit attempt. What it means is that probably for 2.5 years, those 5 million infection attempts, I think there were something like 1 million different devices involved. Those computers have not been patched for 2.5 years. So not only are they still vulnerable to the exploit that WannaCry uses, Eternal Blue it's called, they're probably at risk of any other exploit that came out in the last 2.5 years. Because the way Microsoft updates tend to work these days is, with some special exceptions, if something goes wrong, then what happens is if you miss a few updates, when you get the next one, it's a cumulative update. It kind of backfills all the stuff you missed to try and help people if they only update every 6 months. You don't get just that month's updates. So these computers could be vulnerable to 2.5 years worth of other attacks. So basically they're kind of just waiting for something even worse to happen, like a massive an intrusion that causes a massive data breach. There, instead of having to pay $300 for every computer to a crook who's no longer there, by the way, don't pay the ransom. If you get hit by WannaCry today, one thing that this paper showed is there were at least a few people, from what we can tell from the Bitcoin trail. Of course, Bitcoin transactions, you can look them up. You can't tell who did them, but you can tell that they happened. So the account that the crooks claim to be using is still receiving payments that look like they're about $300. So some people are probably still getting infected, a small number, and they're still desperate.
But they're not sending a decryption key.
They haven't been doing it for ages. Remember, they cut and run years ago.
So where's the money going when you send it?
It goes into a Bitcoin account that a Bitcoin wallet that I don't think anyone is likely to be brave enough to take the money out of in the future. So
interesting. So it's just wasted money.
You basically, if you get infected by WannaCry and you feel the need to pay $300,
don't
send it to me.
Or me. I'll take it.
I'll donate it to the Thames Valley Air Ambulance, actually, so it'll go to a good cause. They helped me out many years ago. But basically, don't send it to the WannaCry, crooks. Don't pay, because it's going nowhere. You're making a bad thing worse.
So we've had a few comments. So hi Nirmal, sorry if I'm not pronouncing that properly, Guy and Teresa. So Teresa asks, what does the worm affect? What does it do, and who should be concerned?
Well, the original WannaCry worm, the idea was it would get into your computer, it would call home to a particular network site. We think that the reason it did that is it wanted to see that if that network site was alive, it was probably running in a carefully nurtured environment in a lab. Because the network site wasn't supposed to be working. And somebody registered that site, which kind of broke the worm, which was quite good, because it stopped it being as bad as it was very much less bad than it could have been. So obviously the modifications have been somebody's tried to change the place where it calls home so they can bring the thing back to life. And the idea is, if it breaks into your computer, if it infects it correctly, because the rest of the worm is not corrupt, that's why it's no longer actually doing anything bad, even if it gets in. The idea is it would scramble all your files. So the point here is, it's not that these new variants of the worm. The good news is, as I've said, is that they're sort of mostly harmless, because they're spreading because they're corrupted, ironically, and they're not able to do anything except spread. The bad news is that everyone's ignoring that, and it's a warning sign that your network is kind of wide open to anyone else. And so if someone actually notices that you're infected with one of these new, allegedly harmless WannaCry variants, it's basically a little sign saying, attack me, and that's the real problem. So the deal here is, fortunately, it's no longer ransomware. What it is an indicator that there are millions of computers around the world that have gone unpatched for this more than 2.5 years. By the way, there's another interesting stat that the researchers extracted in the paper, which is very important, is that back when WannaCry was the end of the world as we know it, a lot of people blamed the problem on Windows XP, which of course it was way out of support. It's no longer getting patches. And everyone's saying, oh, it's the Windows XP users amongst us that are the problems, because everyone else has patched. It's the computers that aren't getting patches that are a problem, and they blamed everything on Windows XP. Our experience is that the computers that were attacked and unpatched in our sample, we measured how many of them were running Windows 7 specifically, more than 97%. So that's good news for Windows 10 users. but it's bad news for the excuse that, the ongoing problem is all down to XP,
Right,
so if I
okay.
haven't got XP, I've got nothing to worry about.
Yeah.
The problem is these Windows 7 computers are still getting patches, or they did get the patches for this worm, and nobody applied it. They probably haven't applied a patch since. So it's kind of a bit of the point of this research is to say, guys, the injuries of the past kind of stick with us.
Right, okay.
Is it Shakespeare, Julius Caesar? The evil that men do lives after them, the good is oft interred with their bones. And that's the case here.
Yeah.
You know, the lessons we were supposed to have learned, we didn't.
Yes.
And the worm is still spreading and advertising that you might have an antivirus, but you ain't patched. And if you've done one and not the other, you've kind of only done a half job.
Still vulnerable.
And that's nowhere near good enough.
Okay, so I know you mentioned that we don't really know where this originated from, but Guy asks, has it got any links with North Korea? Is there any kind of questions around where it came from, or do we just not know?
I think you can probably go online and find
Conspiracy theories.
different conspiracy
Right.
theories, and you might find P different government departments giving Q different reasons.
Right.
Maybe we'll absolutely find out, but the problem with attributing anything to a nation state,
Yeah.
particularly a kind of reclusive one like North Korea, is like, how can you be sure?
Right.
You can't send in the inspectors and go and have a
No.
look. So a lot of this stuff is speculation. It kind of doesn't matter because, to be fair, WannaCry is only one of dozens or hundreds or thousands of different ransomware families.
Yeah.
The ransomware scene these days is dominated by names like Ryuk is one that we've talked
Yes.
about on nakedsecurity.sophos.com.
Right.
BitPaymer are the big names now. And those guys aren't self-spreading, so they're not drawing massive attention to themselves.
Yeah.
They're getting in on the back of other malware that you've already got in your network. So they're suggesting we're kind of maybe not taking security seriously enough. And those guys, they're not asking for $300 per computer. They're not asking for $3,000. They're asking for, I think the record we've seen that got paid so far, can you believe it? It was quite a large number of, quite a big network with a lot of computers in it, admittedly. $4.3 million US dollars
it's crazy
worth of
money.
Bitcoin. And you know, you think, who would have that kind of money?
Right.
Well, if you have cyber insurance, then the crooks know, well, somebody's got the money to pay. And if your business, if basically the wheels are going to come off the jobs of 2,000, 3,000 people, if your business is actually going to collapse because all
You've
your
got no
computers
choice,
are frozen,
yeah.
like you think, well, I've got backup, but is it good enough? Does it go back far enough? Have I got time to do the recovery? I've never faced a disaster on this scale before. I meant to plan for it. When WannaCry hit, I thought, I must do something about that. Never did. So the problem is that the idea of this paper is not only does it show that old viruses never die, they just kind of linger on in the background. There are also lessons that we should have learned that we haven't.
Right. So we've given a lot of advice in the past about ransomware, but what kind of specific advice can you give to people watching this video about how to stay safe from WannaCry? Is it about patching?
That would be the single biggest defense. Obviously, we work for computer security.
And how would people go
company.
about getting these patches?
Well, the Microsoft patches, you can, if you've got Windows 10, you can get those updates delivered and updated automatically.
Okay.
Some people don't.
So do some
like
people
that.
ignore them?
Well, some people don't like the automatic updates because they go, well, it downloads this big thing, and then when it does the update, it takes 35 minutes and it reboots.
Okay.
And you know that thing where it says, getting ready to update, do not turn off your computer. Oh, I wanted to use the
You're in
internet
the middle
right
of
at that moment.
Yeah, okay.
And I can understand that, but you think that if you don't do that, and if you put it off, and you put it off, and you put it off, and you put it off, which you can much more easily do on Windows 7, you go, forget it, Microsoft. I don't need your help. I don't need your help. I've got a buddy using Windows XP and they've never had a problem, so I'll be fine.
Okay.
This is proof positive that you probably won't be. And worse, if you get infected with this one of these WannaCry variants, you're going to be trying to spew out that virus to everybody near you on the network all the time. So actually, you're a typhoid Mary. And it's not good enough to say, you know what, this worm is not harming me, it's just generating network traffic, it's trying an exploit, so if someone else hasn't patched and it's the same boat as me, bad luck to them.
Ooh.
That's a pretty poor attitude to
Yeah,
have.
definitely. I agree.
So the big deal here is the paper about WannaCry is demonstrating that people that people are allowing patches to be missed on at least some of their computers. And what that means is that old threats that you would have sworn had gone away haven't.
Right.
And that means that you're much more at risk of new threats as well.
Absolutely.
The next thing, of course, is it's a reminder that ransomware is a clear and present danger, because in the old days, in the real world, all of these computers that where the infection had actually worked, if by good fortune these new variants hadn't had their payload, the actual warhead part, corrupted, and it could actually have run, you would have lost all your files. So clearly, it's also reminding us that the best defense against ransomware, if it does hit, is to be able to restore your own files so you don't have to do a deal with the devil and pay the crooks. And that means regular backup. It means storing backups off-site and not just relying on live online stuff that the crook. Because these days,
that as well.
when the crooks get in and they want to ransomware your network,
Absolutely.
they go around looking for your backup servers first.
Right.
And they go and trash those and they delete your backups.
Wow.
If you've got people go, I've got a volume shadow copy. Forget it. Ransomware's been deleting your volume shadow copy for years.
So where would you recommend people keep their backups then?
Well, if you're at home, one fantastic way is if you have a removable drive, whether it's SSD like a USB stick or an old school hard drive.
Right.
If you store your backup, if you make an encrypted backup, so that you have the password, you can write it down, put it on an envelope, put it in your safe just in case. If you make your backup and store it encrypted, and your buddy does the same in another property, then once a week, once a month, you guys can swap disks.
Okay.
And that means that if you can't access your house, I mean, you could get God forbid, a fire, flood or whatever. Or you could have what happened to me recently, where the neighbouring block of flats to where I live, there was some gas leak or chemical catastrophe or something. And so they decided, we're going to seal off the block. And if you were in your flat, you could stay in it. But when you left, you weren't allowed back. So I had to go to work. And fortunately, when I came home, I deliberately came home late. They just decided that they'd start letting us back in. So if I'd needed my backup, I couldn't have got it if it was in my own property. So the idea is if you keep an off-site backup, it doesn't just immunize you from ransomware. It immunizes you from fire, from flood, from earthquake, from getting shut out of your property.
And I guess that's especially important for business owners and small businesses, because if you haven't got backups, then as you said, you literally lose your business when they do this.
And people go, well, the thing is that there are many ways you could, unlikely, but it can happen, there are ways that you can use all your data where there isn't even a crook you can pay. No amount of money will get it back from your computer if you drop your computer in the lake. You're going to have to get the data from somewhere else. And the other thing you need to do, if you're a small business, don't just make backup one of those things you do because it's like in the liturgy and it says you have to do it, like kneel here, stand here, or whatever. It's important to make the backup. You need to do practice runs of how you'd restore it. Because we've heard from people who've been hit by ransomware. They actually had a backup. They thought, this is great. And then when they came to do a mass restore, they thought, you know what, we've never practiced this. Golly, this is harder than we thought. And it ended up, it was cheaper for them to pay the crooks than to restore from their own backup. So do a practice. Figure out how you're going to do disaster recovery, because not only ransomware that can hold your data hostage, and in many cases, it might be like now with WannaCry. If it were to scramble your data, there's nobody at the other end issuing decryption keys. The crooks have gone away. So if it does scramble your data, it might as well, it's effectively deleted it. You're going to need a backup anyway. And then the third bit of advice, obviously, is you need to make it hard for the crooks to get a foothold, even if you're patched. Because you can be patched to the hilt, but if a crook sends you an attachment and says,
and you click on it.
There's a copyright infringement allegation against your website, you need to check this out. You think, gosh, I better have a look. Or, we've revised the invoice. Actually, surprisingly, you owe us a lot less than you thought. Open this to find out. You know, think before you click. If you take 5 minutes to get a second opinion on an attachment or a link that you're not sure about, that could save you from a $50,000 bill with the crooks. If your files get scrambled.
Well, great advice. So this is a fascinating topic, and the paper is now available. So we wrote an article on naked security this week, which links through to the paper.
Just search for WannaCry.
And you can find it. And also we've linked to it on social media. And then next week we have Peter Mackenzie on the podcast, which we'll be recording on Tuesday. And he's one of the researchers on the paper. So he'll be offering some really in-depth advice and about his findings, which will be very interesting.
Yes, he was on the podcast a couple of weeks ago. That was a very popular episode because he wasn't just talking about ransomware like we have. He is one of the experts in our managed threat response team.
Yeah.
So he's the guy that when your network's on fire and you phone up and say, well, I wish I'd been a customer before, I want to be now, what can you do, what can I do?
Yeah,
He's the guy
you.
who digs in and
right.
finds out. And by the way, one of the things that we frequently find, Peter frequently finds, when he goes delving after a ransomware attack, is that often the ransomware got in on the back of malware that was already inside your network, that probably got in by phishing or an email that happened days, weeks, sometimes even months before. So often, although the ransomware feels like the end of the world because now you have to pay money, actually it also raises the question, when you've got everything back up, I wonder what those crooks did in the 3 months before.
Yeah, well,
when
they
weren't
access to your
ransomwaring
network.
us, they were probably looking for passwords, stealing data, sending spam from your network, all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
So the problem with ransomware is it's kind of often a symptom of a much bigger malaise inside your organization that means that kind of crooks can wander in and take what they want.
Yeah.
And that's something you really don't want, because not only can it cost you hard, instant money, as with ransomware, could cost you something like an investigation by the Privacy Commissioner or complaints from customers, or worse, having your website modified, suddenly finding you're distributing the next wave of malware because the crooks have chosen to upload it to your website because you used to be trusted. So there's a lot of stuff going on here. Tune in next week.
Yeah, so that'll go live on Wednesday, the interview with Peter, so that'll be very interesting. And obviously before then, if you do have any questions about this conversation we've just had, just comment them below and we'll get back to you. And yeah, thanks for watching, guys.
Until next time.
Stay secure.
Stay secure.
Bye.
Oh, I have to run around and turn it off.
We don't have Harry today. Bye.